Speaking on the fight against COVID-19, UDP Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Patrick Faber, emphasized the need for this government to assist the most vulnerable and least privileged with expenses arising from the pandemic.
Imagine persons out there who are not earning at all, they don't have an income, and they are asked to go to the hospital. They can't breathe, you're feeling weak, you certainly cannot walk. If you can't pay for that ambulance service to come, then that person, that ill person, will get into a car with a person who is potentially not ill. I've heard stories of the entire family arriving in the KHMH parking lot in a van to bring one elderly COVID positive patient because it's the granny or the matriarch or somebody seriously loved by the family, and all those persons are contracting the virus. Or you'll have a person getting into a taxi cab, not telling the taxi man that you have COVID. This is how we've gotten to the stage where we are at. And so we make the plea again to the government to ensure that there is transportation for COVID positive patients to and from the hospital or to and from the clinics or wherever they're going for treatment. That should be a service that is offered.
He called for assistance with burial expenses for those families losing members to COVID-19.
In my constituency, in the last 2 weeks, there have been 4 COVID deaths, and the constituents come, their families come and knock on my door as a representative to ask for support for burying their loved ones. There is no assistance given. We have had in excess of 400 deaths by COVID. I don't know if you have heard of any, but I have not heard of any assistance program from the government to help those families to bury the dead. What you hear is that they are sending you a memo to tell you, come and get the dead body out of the morgue by tomorrow.
Honorable Faber urged the government to restore programs instituted by the UDP administration as part of the social safety net for families struggling economically amidst the pandemic.
And so we call on the government to provide all of these things. We call on the government to get back to providing the social networking for the vulnerable population. There are families in this country that cannot find food on a daily basis. It is a part of the reason why we have such a spike in the crime and violence at this time. It is why the gangs and the drugs are even more attractive now than they were before. And we call on the government to address these matters, to make sure that those families have a pantry package on a regular basis, especially when the breadwinner of the family is down and out suffering from COVID. We call on the government to give financial assistance, as the UDP did, to those who are unemployed and who may have lost their job as a result of the COVID fight. So we want these programs to be reinstated.
He also called for government's intervention on behalf of persons with chronic illness and those seeking elective surgery who cannot access services from the public health institutions because of COVID-19.
We want support for those who need elective surgery as well. We call on the government to make sure that that is done. People cannot go to the regular hospitals because we've closed off because of the need to serve for COVID. So what will become of these people? They now have to go to the private hospitals, and I'm telling you from my own experience, the private hospitals are not cheap. So at very least the government ought to be cutting some deal with the private providers to say, provide these people who need these surgeries, do something for them.
The opposition leader concluded by imploring the government to remove politics from the fight against COVID-19.
We cannot continue to treat this pandemic with politics. There must be a proper all hands on deck approach. And you know the UDP's position on this. Let us put all our hands to the wheel. But the government must embrace everybody, but especially the opposition.